I just didn't realize. And then, of course, not long after it shut down, all these conspiracy theories started coming out. And then it was the Trump-Biden war. Dodgers would win the World Series, and Kobe Bryant died in a helicopter crash that morning. You could see it from where I live. Yeah, I was right downtown LA. They burned the city to the ground. I mean, defunded the police. I mean, I lived on Broadway. I was like literally right downtown. And I just said, you know something, we got to get the hell out of here. And I was saying, oh my God, I can't leave. I couldn't even leave. And all these airplane tickets to travel to Europe. And so I start writing to my constituency and saying, guys, I can't, I'm so sorry, I won't be able to make it to Europe. I won't be able to hear. I don't know. Let's just wait and see how long this goes. And it went on and on and on, and it got worse. It got worse, and the ramifications were just unbelievable. So we said, we're getting out. And so during that period of time, I was trying to come up with ways, but how can I continue to be of value and service for our membership? And and that was all around the world that was going on, and this was eating us up. And I came up with this idea. I said, my online presence with my group became pretty much 24/7. Keep in mind, we have memberships all around the world. And so, it might be 4 o'clock in the morning here, but it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon somewhere else. So our activity had jumped from, I used to spend, say, maybe hour and a half on the internet every day, or unless I was traveling, to spending 9 hours on the internet every day. And my lovely wife, who you know, she is not just physically, but spiritually, intellectually, holistically, the soul and the glue that holds together the fabric of Patrick McCarthy. And she, every single morning we've been married nearly 4 decades. I wake up in the morning, she's already doing Tai Chi. She's a Chen stylist. And that's after she stretches, she does her yoga. And then she'll end her routine with 15-20 minutes of standing Qigong. And so she said to me, she says, you gotta get back to your, I used to be a big TM guy at one time, with Maharishi Mahesh Yoga. That's how I met guys like Alan Inakala. I don't know if you know that name. I think they call him, when I was a kid, they used to call him Dadaji, a Filipino kid. And now his name, Shishir. He's the guy, I would introduce him to Remy Praces, and he would run away and become he's an incredible Arnis guru, And I just looked at this whole holistic thing, and I went, I gotta spend more time inside. I gotta focus more on finding a balance between the destructional chaos and the catastrophic effect it's having upon us as martial artists. And so I made this little drawing, and I put it online. I said to everybody, I used to do their little podcast with just privately for my own group. And I would say, I know we're at a time right now where we're confined to gloves and masks, and we can't go out. So I said, if you can't go out, learn to go in. These once wonderfully functional 2-person practices have almost vanished, by the way, or fallen quietly dormant for a particular reason, which I know. And then because Japanese culture is or has been a homogeneous, highly discriminatory, male-dominated culture for more than a millennium, we see that it is conformist-based culture, and the conformity is based upon all of these things. And you can never question that, because the first tenet of Confucianism is ancestor worship, and you can't question your ancestors. And so, because of all of this, these once wonderfully highly functional practices have become I want to say, uh, wholly dysfunctional, or they have fallen quietly dormant. They've been replaced by kata being used as a mechanism for large groups of people in the schoolyard to focus on physical fitness and social conformity. And then from that, a seed was born through which it rose in popularity to become something other than what it was originally created to be. And so I didn't want to focus on those types of things. And so when I talk like this and talk about the culture, people say, he's being disrespectful or to Japanese culture. I said, I'm not being disrespectful.
What was, like there's so much conjecture around it. I know you've probably spoken to your nauseous. What was the original context in terms of the sheer, you touched upon it when you originally came to Okinawa, you visited a lot of different dojo and trained with a lot of different masters.
Kata. Kata. Let me just lightly touch on this topic for our listeners today, because this is, I've been telling this story for years. I'm not sure how many folks have been drinking the Kool-Aid, but it's very true. So you asked me what, and I say kata. Okay, so for example, during the time of Itosu Anko, and see, to better grasp if you don't have these books, you must have them. This is Itosu Anko. Itosu Anko. This is we call him the savior of a cultural heritage, researched, written by my colleague Joe Swift.
Now, if you're listening to this, he just held up an excellent book, which he's speaking to, which is Itosu Anko, and it's a savior of a cultural heritage, which is an extremely intriguing. I've never seen that book before, never.
Joe Swift, and then
Swift, you'd say.
and then an extension to this, the depth of which I have rarely seen. This is This is the Itosu Anko biography, or I think he put it the English way, Anko Itosu. Yeah, the man, the master, and the myth. And it's it's like another, I think it's like 450-page dissertation by my German colleague Thomas Feldman. So understanding the era in which Itosu Anko, the teacher of Funagoshi Gichi and so on, lived, people think, oh, well, the karate of that era, that's where all the secrets were being taught. I don't think so. I think and I believe quite sincerely that Itosu Anko, and by the way, this is one reason why books like this are important. And other works like George Kerr's Okinawan People Takanoya account from 1895, because what you're doing is it's like Stephen Fabian said, karate, which Budo, of which karate is an integral part, is a microcosm of the culture from which it comes. So the more you learn about the culture, it's not just the shades of gray that it fills in. You begin to understand what was going on at the time. People, and no disrespect, like yourself, very passionate about the history, technical and tactical ambiguity that tends to shroud the innermost meaning of our tradition, want to study it, but you tend to stumble over contemporary assumption. I figure this is the way it is today. So no disrespect, but you said, oh, you didn't know about this book, or this one. I mean, look at a lot of people out there come up from schools, they don't know anything about the bumbu, the scholarly, the intellectual, philosophical part. And there's, when you have that, there's an imbalance, and when the imbalance in learning karate is purely physical, you tend to get a mentality that's associated with toughest guy, those guys are no good, and it's reflected in character. Hence the term, karate aims to build character. It doesn't guarantee it. and Chibana, Konishi, people like that were dedicated to conveying this particular message. But the truth is, it has to be. Masamura told us, condition the body, cultivate the mind, nurture the spirit. Get beyond the ego-related distractions and delve into the functional application of the art and make it a lifestyle. And so the point being this is Itoso Anko, born in the 30s and 1830s and died in 1915. He lived at a very wonderful period of time, but also a very tumultuous epoch of Japanese history, Okinawan history. He watched the abolition of his Ryukyu kingdom, the king abdicate, taken to the mainland of Japan, and in 1872, and then of course within a period of 7 years, by 1879, the Ryukyu kingdom had become a prefecture of Japan at that time under the auspices of Kagoshima, which was Satsuma in those days, and they just continued to exploit it. Banking, industry, commerce, everything was. The Okinawans got nothing, and so that's why you can understand and keep in mind this. And this once again leans towards a German, Ernst von Baylis, focusing, who was a professor of medicine at Tokyo University, but also he was the private physician also of the Meiji Emperor's son, who was the Taisho, who became the Taisho, very sickly man, didn't live very long. And during that period of radical military escalation, you got, I love the Tom Cruise movie. That's a Hollywood movie, okay, but a lot of principles in there were facts. In that era, Japan, being dragged out from the dark ages of feudalism, were within 50 years became one of the most powerful, arguably one of the most powerful nations on the planet. They defeated China. They had defeated Russia. There was a lot of nationalism. Were waving flags everywhere. And so they had when they come out from the feudal, they got rid of the old martial arts. They were antiquated stuff. They want nothing to do with it. But because of the belief in, if we put this stuff into the school system, we're going to work a lot better than boot camp, where the guy couldn't shoot the side of a barn, at 10 meters when he tries to hit Tom Cruise. And you think, oh yeah, that makes sense. So instead of trying to teach an 18 or 20 or 22-year-old guy how to fight in 8 weeks at boot camp, let's think ahead and let's put this mechanism into the school system of, not gymnastics, but calisthenic-like training, which is what kata was. Because in kendo, you see it, you learn 4 strikes and then you put the gear and then beat the shit out of each other. It's a great, you cultivate physical fitness and fighting spirit and it's because of the conformist-based pedagogical light. You've got these people who are socially conformed, and will, if we say jump in an airplane and fly it into that ship, they don't argue with you. And of course, judo was the same way with Kano Jigoro, who had reinterpreted the original tenets upon which many schools of old jiu-jitsu, or wrestling, if you want, because that's what Baylis said. He said in Germany, we put wrestling and swordsmanship into the school system, and that's how we created the warriors of the future, were by doing that. And you get a guy like Itoso Anko, who's down in starving Okinawa, where he's going, how can I jump on this bandwagon? Why, we could do the same thing with our local fighting arts. Let me just take a little bit of time to work with some of my colleagues so I can modify some of these really long and older practices, which were, by the way, those long and older practices were culminations of 2-person practices, where the fighting essence was removed from the 2-person drill and then created into a little ritualized template, which, when linked together with other such practices, created something greater than the sum total of their individual parts. And presto, therein lies what a kata is. So the kata from the get-go was never meant to teach you anything. It was meant to culminate like a mnemonic mechanism, what you had already learned in the martial art itself, which was the two-person fighting practice. So let me just modify some of those and make them, we'll make us, kids went to school for 5 years, and those are, let's put it in, and we'll make it like, you know, later when the development of the radio came, and Japan is a national, you know, it's, remember, it's group conformity compared to the yardstick we Western people use, which is individualism to measure our character. That's a group think in Japan. So every morning they have what they call Dajo Taiso, radio calisthenics, radio gymnastics. And there was like a national kata. My mother-in-law, I'm, you know, married to a Japanese. My mother-in-law, she died some years ago in her 90s. Man, that till the day she died, she woke up every morning and she did the same routine. Everybody knows the same routine here in Japan, even kids now. Radio Taiso, 6:30 in the morning, radio Taiso. And so this idea of Taiso is what Itosu took anyone. So he sat down, put pen to paper, and in October of 1908, he wrote a letter to the Ministry of Education at Momosho, the Department of War, to be, you know, I mean, the Department of War, the Army, the Imperial Army, everyone, the Dainapan Butokukai, and the Momosho were all hermetically, symbiotically related to each other, because most of the people who made those positions all came from the same core cradle. And he also said, I mean, you know, they got the grapple. They're not going to need our tegumi. They're not going to need our sais and bows and stuff like that. But they don't have anything empty-handed. And, you know, you lose your weapon on the battlefield, or you run out of bullets or something like that. You know, this could be a very important thing. So let me tell those leaders that, hey, guys, right here in Okinawa, our hands and feet can be used like spears and halberds. And this is the training of the mind and the body. It fights off disease, and we are. Don't forget what the Duke of Wellington said at the Battle of. This is an Okinawan, by the way. So, by the way, a learned Okinawan, and we understand how foreign information came into the culture. But that's. I mean, look. I mean, Kian Chotoku alone, for God's sakes. Who, you know, they used to laugh. Oh, he was just a country bumpkin. Inaka te. You know, like, oh, it's country bumpkin Roo. The guy. If I could compare his university with, say, America, it would be like he went to Harvard University, or he was like from Oxford. I mean, you know, it's funny. Let me just show you something here. This is quite interesting. So right now in Japan, this is the $100 notes. Okay, like this $100. You see? Mm-hmm. So now this is the new $100 notes. 10,000 yen. The guy who's on the head of that was Kian Chotoku's classmate at the university he went to. But, you know, once again, it's just folks not knowing what they're talking about, you know, and or hang on, let me just look that up on Google. Yeah, I got Google right here, so I don't need to look it up. I'm telling you, that's the way it is. Okay, it's not always easy to get two historians to agree on the same thing. Historians fight against each other all the time. But the difference in methodically trying to discredit a person because they're a threat to your insecurities. You know, we talk about Thomas Feldman, a man of integrity. Joe Swift, Mario McKinnon, Heiko Bittman, Mark. I mean, there are some wonderfully intelligent historians out there who have written fantastic stuff. But I go back to this book for a minute here. Here's a work with one of the two guys, I think, who were most outstanding in recent Okinawan history, who they never, you know, they didn't call their style anything. In his day, Kempo, if you see the ideograms, there's two ideograms, and they're Chinese ideograms used in Japan, and they have a Japanese pronunciation and a Chinese pronunciation, onyomi and kunyomi. So the Japanese pronunciation says Kenpo. The Chinese pronunciation would be Xuanfa or Funfa if you're Cantonese, which just means the law of the fist, like the 8 laws of the fist in the Bubishi, where Miyagi created his name for Goju. And and he was practicing Xuanfa in Okinawa. So he said, Okinawan Kempo, Gancho Toku. I met a lot of guys who study Kyan style Shorin Ryu, none of whom knew that he ever wrote a book in 1932. And when I started doing my research to do this book, and I did that book a lot, like I did the Motochoki book. No, you're wrong, Mr. McCarthy. You're. And then I said, okay, well, here. And I showed them, excuse me, Mr. McCarthy, with all due respect, I know who you are. I know you, Mr. McCarthy. I am a Kyan-based Shorin Ryu practitioner of many years. I'm talking about right here, by the way. I'm not talking about foreigners. There was no book written in 1932. And so I would say, what's that? When I talk like that in academia, and as you know, that's why I was hired to go to Australia was recruited to write a program which resulted in the first academic 2-year full-time diploma program ever written in the world about these things that I'm talking about: principles, history, philosophy, spiritual mechanism, principle, all which were, I would talk to some, there was a joke, I won't say his name, where when I used to teach in England, and they said, Pat, like, let's lighten up on the lecture and let's do more of the training. I go, wow, okay, happy to do that. But isn't that what everybody was missing? I mean, blood and guts, push-up leg raises. I'm a hard man, lots of them around, but South Africa is one of my, I won't, we don't have to individualize it. People used to come to say to me, gosh, I've just learned more from you in 3 days than I learned in 30 years. Or, guys like Morris and people like this. Vince Morris was a great guy, back in the minute. Vince sought me out, hired me to teach. He said, "Oh, Patrick, I'm going to liken you to the electrician." I go, "Okay." Vince, smart guy. I mean, what's that mean? He goes, "Well," he said, "we used to get so used to fumbling around in the dark that we become comfortable with it. And then a guy like you shows up and turns on the lights." Wow. So I was very, very, very humbled by the gracious and very empowering comments I would get from my seniors. And at the end, I was saying, I'm not trying to disrespect or intimidate anybody. I mean, I'm very passionate about tradition and the legacy of these pioneers, who I'm so deeply passionate about. But at the same time, we cannot overlook the ramifications of what history has left us. And so I used to start up my lectures by I'd say, okay, today in my lecture, I'm going to cite Ruth Benedict, Joseph Campbell, Edwin Reischauer, Karl von Wolfram. I had a list about 20 of the leading cultural anthropologists who have talked about Japanese culture and tradition and Matsuo Basho and people like that, and Jean-Gilles en français, to talk about tradition is not about keeping the ashes in a box or blindly following the men of old. It's about continuing to follow that cycle of learning, of learning from tradition, breaking the chains of tradition, transcending the tradition, and that just by itself is how many times have you taught something to someone, or you teach the same thing to different people, and invariably teaching the same thing to different people compels you to learn more about what it is that you're teaching, and it helps to crystallize the understanding of what it is that brings you into contact with the instructional format in the first place. And so I would come back to this and say, yes, there's visual learning. Yes, there's auditory learning. Yes, there's kinetic learning. I'm going to do it. I'm going to see it. I'm going to listen to it. But I'm also going to teach it. And I'm going to record it, because the recording part is, as I mentioned earlier, recording what you learn, when you learn it, helps you in the future look back to saying, I see how far I have come because of someone, my mentor, if you will, has taught me the value of measurement. And so in that regard, that's why I say it's so important. Because if you don't know where you are or what you're doing, how in God's name are you then going to help other people progress as well? And that's what the job of a mentor is, or a coach, a referee, or somebody who's out there helping. But it's not what a sensei is. That's a different thing altogether. It's about a lifestyle. It's not just about a bunch of functional drills and being the toughest guy. It's about keeping your tradition a living experience for the community it serves. That's why it needs to be continually reinterpreted. I can teach people who are not interested until the cows go home, and they're not going to get it. I can't hold back a person whose interest has risen from interest, and so find me someone who's motivated about anything, and I will, like Rodin, I will create a masterpiece. Show me a person with an idol of mine, and I'll show you a devil's workshop. That's why, But I mean, there's lots of pain and there's lots of hard in life, and being successful is hard, and so it's painful, It's but so is being a failure. I mean, it's just the opposite end of both spectrums. It's like, fitness and fat, take your pick. Fitness is hard, man. It's hard. It's disciplined. It's painful, but so is fat. It's just on the other end of it. It's like later all the elements that being out of shape and high blood pressure and all of the catastrophic chemistry actions in your body. That's going to be painful. So which pain do you want? Which discipline? Which direction do you choose to go? And that's why measurement is so important. And that's why listening to somebody who has your best interest at heart is way better than, how much money do you think I can get from this guy? Don't get me started on karate tourism right now. That we'll get lost. Okay. So, oh my God. So Chucklemus. So I'm talking to Uehara Seikichi, who died at 104 years old. I'm talking to Nagamine Shoshin. I'm talking to Miyahira Katsuya, and everybody in between. And and of course, even my own teacher, Kinjo Hiroshi, who was Japan's premier historical journalist for all of his life, and the founder of Okinawa, founder of Japan's first ever karate magazine. It says Gekkan Karate-do. So Kinjo Hiroshi created this martial art magazine in 1957. In late 50s. And actually, the reason why I just have this particular issue in my hand right now is because I got a thing here on the Izumigawa Kanki that I was translating. And at the same time, there's an interview between Richard Kim and Kinjo Hiroshi in this one, but for another time. So I come into contact with all these leading authorities, and many of them just happened to also have Kyan Chotoku and Motobuchoki so I got this resonating in my mind. I've already learned the two-person drills, and then of course, we use the term reverse engineering. Oh, that's not possible. You can't do it. Hey, do you know who the HEMA people are?
Yes. Yes.
Historical European Martial Arts Association. I'm also really passionate about Western swordsmanship, by the way. And back when I was doing some of my research back in the 80s, I was still I came across the Kano Jigoro Sensei's 1895 workbook on jiu-jitsu, before we called it judo, and I was contrasting that with my Katori Shinto Ryu. I do Katori Shinto. Everything is a two-person drill, by the way. It's a two-person drill. The guy can only attack somebody who has the sword. You have to learn to receive it and then respond by doing this. And we have this wonderful reservoir of two-person drills. But the whole purpose of the two-person drills is to make you grammar, functional. Think about it. Why would you, if you're a soldier or samurai, or back in the day, when you're in a garrison, you were learning templates. That's a kata. Kata is a template. It's a collection of templates. You model an example of how something's done in a ritualized form, and then you bring it to life through this scenario-driven, aggressive, violent behavior, until such time as you become functionally efficient with it, and everybody knows that, unless you're doing, I have to check with my teacher to see if that's okay. And so anyway, the end result, I know I try to make light of it.
Yeah.
I just have to shake my head, really honest as God, sometimes to think, what are they doing? What the hell's going on? And so I came across the work of Nicholas Petter and Hans Stellhofer. And these guys are, Petter and Stellhofer's work are widely recognized as, and these people were curators of they call them fight books, like a German, a fight book. And the Portuguese, the Spanish, the Dutch, everybody had them back in the day. And they were, to catalog the fighting methodologies of a broadsword, a straight sword, a bastard sword, a basket sword, a buckler, a bayonet, whatever it happened to be. And but also, while these artists, I think between Petter and Stellhofer, I think it goes something like maybe from the early 19th century back to the 15th century, I believe, between the two of them. And I, at the time, I was not so interested in the sword or the weapon part, but more the weaponless part. And while doing that cross-comparative analyses, and while the costumes and the clothing and the etiquette and those may have changed from country to culture to ethnicity, those acts of physical violence remain constant, by the way. And so that was a big wake-up call for me, and I started to call upon that. But it wasn't until it was my my second trip to Shaolin, where I met Liang Shipu, who was once a Shaolin monk, but now had become, because of the commercialism, had become the chief librarian or historian at Denfeng County in Shaolin Village. He was the first person to turn me on to, but no. You get attacked this way. All the attacks are systematized. And that's what also drew my attention to the 48 postures in the Bubishi, although there's much more in there. But that was, this guy, when this guy does this guy does this. Here's the formula against this act of violence. So that kind of set this thing in motion, where when I got up high enough on the mountains and the restrictions but the limitations, style or interpretation, because that's what a restriction is. It's someone who has a limited interpretation of that which there is to know. You know, Shotokan. Well, what do you do when you throw on the ground? We don't fight on the ground. Referee will break you up. You know, that, silly type of talk. Well, karate's a sport. The guys in England used to just pound me. These were guys who were, you know, my rivals, professional rivals, who would say, you know, like, I mean, if there was groundwork or grabbing or in karate, don't you think we would have known about it by now? And I would say, well, that's a reasonable assumption, because, you know, you think one quote I popularized a very long time ago was, you know, the nail and the hammer, right? Thanks to Jesse, who popularized it for me. It was, you know, liking the reverse punch to a hammer. I would say then, if the only tool in your box is a hammer, you better hope all the jobs I go to look like nails, you know. And so that type of mentality, which cannot fix the problem, who was it who said, was it Einstein or Freud? I said, you can't fix the problem with the same mentality that created it. And that's why they were never able to think above and beyond what I was trying to deliver. So I used to have to kind of trick them, you know. I won't say how I did that, by the way, but it worked, you know, and that was my little NLP anchor for creating a way with which to, another reason why to remember what it was we were practicing. And so once it became believed that, you know, karate can be a lot of things to a lot of people, you know, I mean, really, countless things. I mean, therapeutic, emotional, physical. But I try to quantify them into 5 different things, you know. Of course, karate become a sport. We all know that. And with the Olympics, Antonio Espinosa's work surrounding, and of course, everybody who supports the World Karate Federation have done a remarkable job. And I'm just still not, I'm still trying to quantify why, you know, frisbee throwing and breakdancing or skateboarding replaced it. All fascinating things to look at, but you know, and why Irish dancing? Sorry, I mean Taekwondo is still, you know, I mean they had a cookie.
I just want to take this moment to say the views reflected about Irish dancing. I mean Taekwondo competition on this podcast. Do not necessarily reflect those of the network.
But the interesting part about especially the Taekwondo is because you know, coming up and being as old as I am, and some of my colleagues will have a good laugh at this, because we remember when General Choi Hong, he was exiled from Korea. You know where he wound up? He wound up in Toronto, by the way, my stomping grounds. And a lot of his senior guys would come out of what they call the 8th Army, and it was a kind of a tiger division in Seoul. All the top athletes with those guys, and a lot of those guys would become bodyguards. And one of them was Park Chung-soo, who would become known as the father of Taekwondo. Anyway, I remember going up the staircase with him painting the wall with a pair of coveralls on, and me saying, "How much does it cost to join?" And that era, my God, that, you know, that late 60s, very early 70s, Park Chung-soo's people like Rick Paris, Don James, Alphonse Gabineau, Case Coogan's, Dino Henning. These guys, man, made Taekwondo a force to be reckoned with. I mean, these guys were remarkable. Totally. And then, of course, and then the rivals to them were down in Montreal under Chong Lee's, Daniel Riquet. I mean, these were the best type of people I'd ever seen in my life to this day. But you know something? That was the 70s and the 80s. What happened to them? I mean, when I saw this in the Olympic Games, honest to God, I'm very familiar with Bogu style kumite. Come on, I mean, I co-commented at World Koshiki Championships in Copenhagen, Denmark, back in the day. I know one of the guys, he's the Taka sensei who advocate that for Olympic Games himself. I'm not unfamiliar with how that works. And I went, what the heck happened there? And
Well,
let's leave that other conversation.
But we just before we jump off that, Sensei, you know what I'd like to see if we look any martial art that I'd love to see, or any format in terms of karate, I'd love to see kudo or daido juku. I think that would be amazing. I really like that format. You've got to be young and fit, but yeah.
Listen, I 100%. But you know something, look at, they Aikido and now combat karate, I was going to tell you about the 5. Let me finish with this 5. I've said it many times. Well, let me make it a little bit clearer. I'll come back to that because I'll go to sport karate right now. Okay. Sport karate, irrespective of what organization you're talking about, whether it's the World Karate Federation, whether it's a USK or IAKF or whatever group it is, it's about rules and regulations. So it's not about self-defense. And I'm not saying that a guy who's a top athlete in sport karate could not make a totally competent. Of course they could. Of course they could. I'm just saying, sport karate is separate from hands-on brutality and the violent behavior associated with somebody glassing you or biting your nose off. I'm not going to see that in sport karate. So the sport of karate, sport fighting, are governed by rules and regulations. And by virtue of those rules and regulations, that would set the foundation upon which how you train to accomplish it. And it's not rocket science. Karate is also a lactic-based form of physical fitness. And now I can bring in aerobic adjuncts to it, and I can bring in weight-associated workloads with it. But as a rule, that's what it is. It's a wonderfully challenging alternative form of physical fitness. It's a lifestyle, and certainly for folks like us, and most likely a lot of the folks that are listening to our conversation today, I'm sure we're preaching to the choir. We are like-minded people, and how we embrace, or what percentage of the lifestyle we embrace, that's a variable as well. Okay, but it's safe to say that karate will become a lifestyle. Oh, sorry, karate, which is part of Budo, is a microcosm of this culture, and so and certainly it's also an industry. And I mean, my God, it's I've known of I'm coming back to on my second piece of paper. You said something that made me think about when you were talking about this. It's when I say professional karate instructor, I'm not necessarily alluding to the guy who runs a McDojo in a strip mall, for $39.95, and that I'm not referring. I'm referring to a person who at a certain point, maybe it's in secondary education. It could go on until that person makes a decision on which career path they want. It could be in tertiary level education. It could be after tertiary. It could be after university where I decide. But can you imagine a human being, a person who at some point in their life gets bitten by the bug and realizes early on in life, this is all I want to do. I
can't imagine. I
are both a product of that, as is Caesar and many of our other good friends. But I'm just saying, because there's a whole generation out there who don't know this. So if for nothing else, let me quantify it for the sake of longevity, okay? Can you imagine somewhere along the lines, a young man or woman says, this is it. What's the metaphor? Find me something, find me a person who's passionate about something, and I'll show you a person who'll never have to work for the rest of their lives. And so the passion becomes the vocation, becomes the profession. So when I say profession, people often associate that with money. I don't teach for the income. I never have. I teach for the
Outcome.
You know, and so and while that's a little funny joke, I mean, it's, and of course you need money, right? Nobody's saying you're going to free, but here's the point I want to make. Let's say that you discover you as a teenager, you say, you know something, I am so captured by this. The calling here is more than just punching and kicking. It's more than just violence or fighting. This is a path where, and you maybe would later understand, or a mentor or a sensei would teach you that this pathward will ultimately turn your attention inward, and it will fix all of these external problems. You know, we're all broken anyway. All of us, you know, we're all cracked. You know, so it's my little joke with my, you know, some of my singer friends and my blues brothers to say the cracks are what allow the light in, the cleansing light of the sun to fix us all, you know, if you let it. And so karate is an industry. And I mean, I'm going to tell you something with what I now see as karate tourism. Oh, I think it's a, you know, I think there needs to be some more rules and regulations applied to that industry, but that's another story. Okay, so karate. So number 4, karate is an industry. Okay, so, and the point I wanted to make this before I say what the 5th one is why is it that the people who tend to get in charge of the big groups are not professionals? Like, you know, they do something else. They work on a city council, or they're lawyers, or they're accountants, or they're bus drivers, or they're politicians. Or why is it they get to create all the mandates, and you know, guys like us tend to threaten their insecurities, you know, because it's all we've ever done. I can tell you, I have been a career instructor of the fighting arts for 51 years. I have been practicing and learning the fighting arts for 6 decades, and it's all I've ever done. And you know, as I told you, I was a high school dropout. I would not go back to education until I was a young adult, but I would go back with a passion for, I want to learn that. I want to study cultural, physical, and forensic anthropology. I want to understand the mechanics and principles of motion and power. So I gotta, and you know, isn't it funny? You know, Elon Musk is one of my heroes, right? And you know, I've followed him, and I followed him long before he became the popular guy. You know, born in South Africa, single mom, out of the box. You know, but hey, look what he's just created. Sorry, Elon didn't do it. It was Jordan Peterson, the favorite Canadian. Nobody, the backing behind this. Okay, Jordan says, I got an online university right now with the best of the best in the world. And we're going to charge you $500 a year. You're going to sign up, register for whatever course you want. You make the course. You make it. Like why did I have to learn Latin in school? I didn't learn that. I have to learn that. I didn't want to learn it. Why did I have to learn trig and algebra? I'm not a mathematical person. Why did I have to learn it? I don't see that in the school. I don't see it in the school system where you're taught the rules of life, how to think outside the box, how to pick your ass up off the ground when you fail multiple times, and realize, hey, the falling down is the lesson, buddy. It's the getting up that's important. The failure is where you meet Sensei Murphy, the guy who teaches you what will go wrong, can't go wrong. But you don't want it to go wrong. There is your lesson. I don't get that. I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see it today. I don't see it. You know, when I was in Australia, I was being criticized for having my students train for 90 minutes in a class with a drink of water. And I'm like, So what? You be dehydrated. I said, isn't there at one moment in your life where, under the care and supervision of somebody who's watching to see if you're dehydrated, will push you or try to push you beyond your, even if it's only gentle discipline, to push you beyond something called your level of comfortability. I just made that word up by the comfortability. Comfortability.
That makes sense.
Comfort zone. I drag your ass out of the comfort zone. I keep you there. And I try to keep you there for as long as I can each another subsequent time, until such time as you say, you know something, I like feeling uncomfortable outside the comfort zone under these circumstances, because it's helping to shape the person I want to become.